In this episode of Tampa Explained, we are going to look at the city of Tampa compared to the rest of the Tampa area. It gets a little bit confusing what part is the city, what part isn't, and locals can be very particular at times about how you refer to those areas. Here we go. I'm Sam, and thanks for coming by the Living in Tampa channel, where we make videos about what it's like to live and move to the Tampa, Florida area. If that's something you want to follow along with, don't forget to subscribe. I'm also a licensed realtor in the state of Florida, so if you have any real estate specific questions, please feel free to reach out anytime. Alright, today we're talking about the city of Tampa, and specifically what is the difference between the city of Tampa and the parts of the county of Hillsborough County that have Tampa addresses but aren't actually in Tampa. I want to address some of this confusion and try to add a little bit of clarity, or at least give some ideas of how you could think about it moving forward. So the city of Tampa is really only this shape that you see right here, starting down south in South Tampa, and going up and kind of veering to the east as it goes into New Tampa. And New Tampa is actually the newest part of the city of Tampa. It was annexed into the city in 1998 and was built out as a master planned community. This highlighted area is only 400,000 people compared to the overall metro area of Tampa, which is around 3 million people. Maybe that makes sense to you, maybe it doesn't, but we're gonna seek to add some clarity here. The city of Tampa was founded in the late 1800s, and that area kind of focused around South Tampa and like the Hyde Park area. And a lot of these roads were actually made wider to accommodate for railroads and horse-drawn carriages. Following the founding of the city was the founding of the county, Hillsborough County. And this county was very large, stretching all the way over to the Gulf. The county along the Gulf, Pinellas County, was not founded until later, and there's a whole battle over how Clearwater became the county seat over there that we'll get into when we talk about that county. So as boundaries were established for the city of Tampa, not everybody lived in those boundaries. Some people wanted to live outside of those boundaries where there was more land and more potential for farming and ranching. Now here we are 140 years later, and we're trying to make sense of this metro area of 3 million people. One of the really confusing parts about this is that areas outside of the city of Tampa, these unincorporated areas of Hillsborough County, often still have Tampa addresses. But whenever I call these areas part of Tampa or an area of Tampa, like in my Carrollwood video, I referred to it as an area of Tampa, and people commented that this is not an area of Tampa, this is Carrollwood Village. That's the neighborhood that defines Carrollwood. And that kind of feedback is actually pretty confusing if you're thinking of moving here, because the homes in Carrollwood still have Tampa addresses, and it doesn't quite make sense. Or the area of West Chase is confusing because it's kind of one zip code, but then the area just north of that is very similar when you go into the Eagles neighborhood. And it gets a little confusing, and the people that live in the Eagles still think of themselves as living in West Chase. So we have to figure out how to move forward. Honestly, maybe some of these differences are very obvious to locals who have lived here for a long time. But me, having lived here a little over a year, it's still not very clear. And I'm exploring these areas constantly. I was actually having lunch with some clients that were in town just the other day. We ate at this place in Palm Harbor called the Ozona Pig. Very good barbecue place over here on the Gulf side. They had a big paper map of the Tampa area. We had it unfolded on the table as we were waiting for our food. And one thing that stood out to me was there were two different colors. There was a white part of the map and then a kind of yellow part of the map. The yellow part of the map was all of the cities that are like incorporated cities. And then all of the white was all of the unincorporated areas around the counties. And there is so much unincorporated area, especially in Hillsborough County. When you go into Pinellas County, it gets a little bit more incorporated as cities grabbed land, but there are still pockets like Palm Harbor that is not incorporated in Pinellas County. So you may be asking, why not just make it better? Why not incorporate all of this unincorporated area into the city? And this actually was a big conflict that happened in 1998 with the annexation of New Tampa. The developers involved in this big master plan community wanted the city to take on this area as part of the city instead of part of the county, because the taxes for the city are a little bit higher and would help to offset a lot of this new infrastructure. But the people in this area fought this tooth and nail because they didn't want their taxes to increase, their property taxes and their sales tax. Eventually, the big corporation won out, and this area was annexed into the city at the end of 1998. I bring up this example because it does seem like a very obvious solution to some of these issues. Like, Carrollwood just could become part of the city of Tampa, and the Carrollwood neighborhood is very established. This dilemma does remind me of the old adage that if it's not broke, don't fix it. And maybe that's the answer to how we are moving forward. Carrollwood and West Chase and all of these other areas are fine existing as part of the county instead of part of the city of Tampa. So why go out of our way to change things? But that brings us to our real point, was how to make sense of this. And I would also pose the other question of, do you need to make sense of this? If you are moving here, does it matter? Do you need to understand the differences between the city and the county, the unincorporated and the incorporated? And the real answer is no, you don't. You don't need to understand all the nuances, and locals will show you how much they care or how much they don't care, and you'll pick up the details as you live here over the years. So let's finish by talking about some of the primary differences between the city of Tampa and the unincorporated areas of Hillsborough County. The number one difference is taxes. Property taxes are mostly paid to the county. Even if you live in the city of Tampa, your property taxes are managed by the county. But just by living in the city, your tax rate is a little bit higher, because some of those property taxes are paying for very specific city-related things. Before March 2021, so this year, the sales tax in Hillsborough County was 8.5%, which was the highest in the state of Florida. And in March 2021, it was dropped to 7.5%. So that extra 1% that was not common in the rest of the area came down. So that kind of levels the playing field as it relates to sales tax. But overall, the most impactful difference in the city versus the unincorporated county areas is just knowing where you are. You can drive in these areas and they don't really designate when one area ends and the other begins. So you're driving north and you go, into Carrollwood and then into Northdale, and then you're in Lutz. And then Lutz actually overlaps with the other county to the north, and then Cheval is to the west of there. Is that part of Lutz, or is that part of, is it its own city? Is it just a neighborhood that makes up Cheval? It gets kind of confusing, and when you're just here exploring, that is confusing. So if you're coming here and you're thinking you're just gonna look around and figure the area out, then you're in for a treat, because it is kind of hard to tell when things end and another begins. And that's just kind of how the whole area is. It's not just Hillsborough County that's that way, but Pinellas County is that way and Pasco County is that way as well. So which should you choose? Should you choose the city of Tampa, or should you choose the unincorporated parts of Hillsborough County? And the reality is, it doesn't matter that much. The unincorporated areas are going to be a little less regulated and taxes are going to be a little bit cheaper. But if you're moving from an area that's more expensive, then the shock of living in the city isn't going to be intense. But it is very clear, based on the conversation online, that people that are in the unincorporated areas do not want to be incorporated. They do not want to become part of the city government. They would rather be managed by the county. And maybe this is just the Florida nature of not wanting to be so regulated. This is very common, and a very common posture that I see in this area is just kind of, like kind of a libertarian mindset of just not wanting to be told what to do. Even a comment that I got on my video about the Lutz area was just like, don't tell me I can't shoot my guns in my backyard, because I can. And you get that a little bit more. I don't want to make the unincorporated areas sound like they are extremely rural, because they're really not. They're still very suburban and very city-like. Carrollwood and West Chase and Citrus Park, these areas feel like part of the city of Tampa. It's not like they just feel like they are on the outskirts. I hope that this adds some clarity or actually explains some of the confusion and why it is confusing and maybe confusing forever. I hope you got some value out of this. And again, this is part 2 of the Tampa Explained series, where we will keep explaining these kind of topics, and we will continue to go back to the map over and over again and add some clarity and explanation to this entire Tampa metro area. Again, if you need any real estate help, I am always here to help you and can be reached by phone, text, or email any time of the day. Thanks for coming by.